In Islam, there's a concept called Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb. That means the house of Islam and the house of war. Anything that's under the Islamic control is good. Anything that's yet to be under Islamic control is under the house of war. So Israel existentially cannot exist. So why am I saying all this? You can't have peace if you have the other side that truly never wants for you to exist. That's the bottom line.
Hello everyone, Insightful Nomad here. In this video, I want to show you a clip with the Jewish Canadian intellectual, the one and only hilarious Gad Saad on the Joe Rogan podcast, talking a little bit about the conspiracy theories regarding the Jews among Muslim communities. And he is speaking from personal experience as somebody who grew up in Lebanon as a minority Jew among Muslims and also a fluent Arabic speaker. Let's take a look at what he had to say here.
It is an existential affront that the Jewish state exists in the Middle East. So look at all other religious minorities across Arabia. Egypt used to be completely Coptic Christian, 100%, many hundred years ago. Today, there are 10% Copts left. What happened to those Copts? There used to be tons of Christians in Syria. What happened to those Syrians? There used to be tons of Christians in Lebanon. There still are some, about 30, 35%, but Lebanon used to be a majority Christian country. So the goal of Islam, not individual Muslims, right? Again, I don't need to preface by saying there are millions and millions of lovely, kind, peaceful Muslims. Of course there is. But Islam as an ideology, does it tolerate others? Well, we have 1,400 years of history that either says it does or it doesn't, right? We don't have to watch TikTok videos. And nothing could be clearer than what the words of Muhammad were, the prophet of Islam, who said that you need to rid Arabia of Christians, but certainly the Jews. So the existence of the land of Israel is an affront to that.
This is a very important point that Westerners, they have a very flawed understanding of the history of the Middle East. They think that, they think of the indigenous or the natural sort of inhabitant of the Middle East is an Arabic-speaking Muslim wearing a kafia or something, dressed up in that traditional dress, like Lawrence of Arabia, something like that, when in reality, that came in the 7th century. Right? That was in the Arabian Peninsula. They burst out of the Arabian Peninsula, conquered all of these countries that had large communities that were not like that. He mentioned the Coptic Christians, you had the Assyrians, you had the Jews, many others who are now all minorities living under the Muslims, usually as some type of discriminated and oppressed minority. I'm not saying that people today should be held responsible for that, or that you should have some type of historical guilt, the same way I don't say an American should have historical guilt over the colonizing of the Americas. I don't say that about the Arabs or the Muslims, but we do need to at least recognize what the history is, and that in many ways, yes, they are sitting on top of various other cultures in the Middle East, and this is what Gad Saad was saying in this video.
One more point, I'll cede the floor back to you. In Islam, there's a concept called Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb. That means the house of Islam and the house of war. Anything that's under the Islamic control is good. Anything that's yet to be under Islamic control is under the house of war. Once a territory is under Islamic control and you lose it, you have to get it back. It is your dominion forever. This is why, for example, Andalusia, which was at one point controlled, which is in current Spain, which was controlled by the Moors, an Islamic conquistador, a lot of jihadists will say, inshallah, we have to reconquer Andalusia. It is our land, because once it's under... So Israel existentially cannot exist. So why am I saying all this? You can't have peace if you have the other side that truly never wants for you to exist. That's the bottom line. If you can change people's heart where they say, look, I get a piece of land, you get another piece, let's build an incredible, vibrant co-society together, you'd have peace. But if you're taught from straight out of the womb that the Jews is the reason for every calamity in the world, you're not going to have peace.
But don't you think that there are Jews and there are Israelis that treat Palestinians as if they're less? There
is that in Texas in terms of treating people who are Hispanic. The darkness of the human heart is not monopolized by one group. There are super nasty Jews, and they are incredibly lovely and kind Jews. There are super nice Muslims and incredibly brutal Muslims. So there is no monopoly on the darkness of the human heart. So I concede that. Of course, there are Jews that are not very keen on having Palestinian neighbors. But as someone who grew up in the two worlds, right, I'm an Arabic-speaking Jew. I hang around with tons of Muslims. I hang around with tons of Jews. Have I ever heard somebody in my Jewish family say, oh God, I can't wait for us to eradicate the 1.52 billion Muslims in the world? I've never heard that. Have I heard incessantly all the time about, inshallah, we'll get rid of the Jews? Every second. You just have to say, hi, Ahmad. The next line is, God damn it, we got to get rid of the Jews. Now, it's become a lot.
Is it really that common where you are?
It's as common as the heat in Texas. It is definitional. As a matter of fact, I introduced a game, I mean facetiously, but I mean it seriously, 6 Degrees of Jew. So that's a play on 6 degrees of...
Kevin Bacon.
Exactly. So I give you a calamity in the world, and you've got up to 6 causal steps to blame the Jew. So an Amazonian frog just died in the Amazon. Go. And so I will post these on Twitter, and people give answers.
Right.
Now, oftentimes they're just playing along, but that's the mindset. You got diabetes? Well, that's because the Jews who are controlling the pharmaceutical industry are not releasing the drug. I'll give you a recent one that I faced.
Okay.
So I put up a police lineup of some guys that had been caught in Huddersfield, which is a town in England, who had been grooming and raping young British white girls. And you may or may not know this. I'm not sure if we've discussed it in the past. In Britain, over the past 25 years, there's been an unbelievable industrial scale level grooming and raping of young white girls by Asian men. That's a euphemism for men of a certain religious heritage, but you say they're Asian. So their names are, let me summarize them for you. Muhammad, Ahmad, Muhammad, Ahmad, Muhammad, 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 Ahmad, Ahmad, Muhammad, Ahmad, Ahmad, Muhammad, Ahmad, Muhammad. Okay? So I put those up, and I sarcastically said, I don't have a big enough brain to do the big data analytics to understand what is the commonality across all those gentlemen. Could anybody help me? Do you know how many people wrote to me and blamed it on the Jews? Not facetiously. So now I'm going to ask you, Joe.
How?
I was just going to ask you that. How is it when 3 Muhammads rape your 12-year-old British girl, you blame it on Mordechai? 3 Muhammads lead to Mordechai. Tell me how. You tell me.
I don't know. How do they do it?
Who let them in? It's the Jewish cabal who controls immigration policy. It's George Soros, the Jew, who controls the open society ideology.
I don't think you could really just connect George Soros to Jewish if you look at his policies. He seems anti-Western civilization.
I agree, but for the Jew hater, any causal explanation.
So one individual who just happens to be Jewish,
or they point to some other one. There's one I don't even know who she is. I think Barbara Lerner or something. Somebody will correct us in the comment section, where they show her saying something. Oh, we need to flood, and she happens to be Jewish. But for every Jewish person who is pro open door policy, there's a counter Jewish person. Here is one who is not for open border policies, right? Stephen Miller, who worked in the Trump administration, is Jewish. He's probably the biggest anti-open door immigration. So, but that's the mindset of the Jew hater. Everything is blamed. There's this incredible diabolical feature of the Jew that they're able to at times pretend that they're victims, but really they're diabolical and genocidal. It's grotesque, man.
It's weird. It's just weird that it became so out in the open.
Well, Gad Saad is kind of hilarious. I have to say, I've never really talked too much about the kind of like scripture stuff in Islam and how it views Jews and other minorities, which Gad Saad did touch on a little bit there, because I just don't know those things enough, and I don't feel comfortable like talking about a religion from a theological perspective. In such a kind of like condemning manner. I've been very careful also in all my videos. I visited Muslim countries and so forth. It's kind of like not my style so much, but I think there are some things there that we have to concede, in the sense that, first of all, historically, Islam conquered all those places that he mentioned in the Middle East, the Copts in Egypt. There were Jews living in ancient Israel. that were then under the Byzantines and so forth. You had Assyrians. You had all these different groups. They came, conquered, imposed their culture, ideology, and religion on the population and have been ruling them ever since. And you can't now go and look at the Middle East without understanding that. And a lot of people, they just don't even know about these other communities that live as minorities that still exist in these regions that predate the Arabs and the Muslims. And like I said again, that doesn't mean that somebody today, the Muhammad, as he used, the Ahmad and the Muhammad, are to blame or need to, the same way I say someone in the US doesn't have to apologize, quote, for, I don't know, any conquests that the early settlers did in the US, then these people are not to blame and so forth, but they do have an obligation to treat their minorities well, which they don't exactly do. And that's something that is very important to mention. And then he talked about the crazy kind of conspiracy theories, which is something that you see a lot, that, the 6th degree of Jew, oh, we have rapes happening in Britain with grooming gangs. The Jews, they let the foreigners in because, look, there's a video of a Jew doing something, so it must be them. The pharmaceuticals, it must be them. And one of the ways you get to this is by finding one video or one quote of someone as evidence. Like the Jews, I'm not part exactly of the Jews, right? There's a Jew somewhere living in France saying something. I have no relation to that. We're not together in a cabal. Like that's the essence of the type of anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. It's the idea that all these different Jews, so if you go in the US, it's the guy who's in Hollywood, the guy who's in the media, the guy who's in finance, the guy who's in politics, all of these people, they have like a secret Telegram group where they coordinate their activities, how to empower themselves and weaken everybody else. That's the core of these type of theories. Because, it's the connection between the different people, all in the name of some type of secret agenda. Because you'll go online, you'll see a list of how Jews control America, and there'll be a list. Look, here's a Jew in the media. Here's a Jew in politics. Here's a Jew in this. Here's a Jew in that. Like, they'll do this list, and then, oh, there's the evidence. You see, look at all these influential Jews. Okay, fine. There's a lot of influential Jews, but the question is, are they all secretly in it together to empower themselves and to immiserate everybody else? That's the element which they never have any proof of when they show these type of things, because it doesn't exist. That's the core of the anti-Semitic element, is not that somebody said something or did something bad, because there are Jews like, I don't know, like Epstein and Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein, who were, rapists and so forth and terrible people. There are Jews like Maidorf, who was a crook, who scammed people out of millions and millions of dollars. There's all kinds of Jewish people who have done these things. The question is, are they part of a secret cabal that are doing it in sync with, I don't know, the Mossad or with some type of other agenda? That's the element. That's the insidious element in these type of theories, and the one that they never are able to present, to prove, because it just doesn't exist. It's, you're taking an individual Jew who did something, who said something, and then you're like, oh, he's doing this in the name of the Jews, or as part of the Jews trying to control us. That was from Gad Saad for you. You should definitely follow him. He's he's also very funny just to listen to, so yeah. Gad Saad, Joe Rogan. That's all I have for you in this video. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.